Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brandon, also known as Super Fanboy Guy, and I'm here with my lovely, beautiful, all sorts of attractive words co-host, Mr. Jacob Wheeler. Jacob, how are you doing today, sir?
Hey, do you guys ever watch King of the Hill, like with Buckley?
Of
You know Buckley?
course. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that guy.
Oh,
That
that
guy.
that was your
That
reference
guy's like
there,
my.
right there.
Yeah, he's like my spirit animal.
Your spirit animal. Oh, that's pretty good. Okay, so this is the sixth episode of the podcast, and if you tuned in with us last time, we took a break from talking about Golden Age decks. We did a segment called Meta Talk and Versus System Finance, which I want to kind of go over. There's something that I left out in my Versus System Finance that I think it's important to bring up really quick before we start on our topic for today. But I also did forget to mention that, you know, keep in mind that when you buy cards from either websites or on the Facebook group, that unlike, currently imprint card games like Magic, Dragon Ball, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, those kind of card games, versus system cards, since it's out of print, you're not going to find, cards in mint condition unless they were like pack fresh, like open straight from the pack. So I just remember that when you buy cards, they're not always going to be necessarily in quote mint condition. And some of the foils that you buy are going to have like some scratches, or even the non-foils might have like a little bit of wear and tear on, I've noticed mostly on the back, and there could also be scratches on those as well. So before buying cards, just keep in mind that you're not always going to find mint condition cards. So that was one point I just wanted to bring up really quickly that I thought was important to mention. And the other thing that I forgot to talk about in last week's versus system finance segment is that if you're a seller and you are selling to a buyer, and this is a note for really the buyers, that the seller, it takes time for them to take the cards out, look at the cards, send you pictures, and it takes a lot more work than people think that needs to be taken, if you're going to sell to somebody on the Facebook group. So buyers, just be kind of courteous to the sellers, and if they go through all this work and they give you a price of their cards and you don't like the price, don't just like ignore them, don't message them, and just I guess the term is don't ghost them. If you don't like the price of what they're doing, just say, I would like to cut some of the cards out to be kind of cheaper, or you could just say, I'm not really interested in some of the cards, can we do like a different deal? Just talk with them and communicate with them. Don't just like leave them out in the dark, because I've seen that happen a lot in the versus system community. So those are just the 2 points I wanted to talk about, the follow up from last week's episode. So I don't know, Jacob, is there anything that you want to add before we get into today's topic?
I hate when that happens. I can't stand it. I actually have a funny story about. I recently bought a collection, and everything was good, but when the collection arrived, it was like I had asked because it was a pretty decent amount of money that I had paid for. It was like I think it was like 4 or 5 decks, but there was some Spider-Man Ultimates in there, and I was really excited to go ahead and grab it. And later on, I'm planning to kind of like flip it, make a little bit of money. But one of my criteria was like, hey, is the condition of these cards like really good? And I had to take a step back because when I received this stuff, some of the cards, not a lot of them were great, and the ultimates were in pristine condition. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But some of the stuff that was in there was like the sleeves were like not the right sleeves. I don't know if you knew this, but versus system cards are just like a scotch wider, and I mean a little bit wider than Magic the Gathering cards. So when you take a standard Magic the Gathering sleeve, like it's going to fit tighter, just a little bit tighter in there. So the perfect fit sleeves for Magic the Gathering are actually going to warp and almost damage the cards that
Oh,
the
okay.
versus cards, right? And so there was a couple of like 10, $15 cards in there that were in the perfect fit sleeves. And I mean, they were just when I tried to pull them out, they were just all warped and mangled. And I just had to like remember, like, okay, these will still sell and they'll be fine because of what you said. Like, there's just finding the mint condition cards. It's very rare. It really is.
Especially like those older foils, like from Origins and Web of Spider-Man. Those
Yeah.
Origins I've noticed that seem to get the most like scratched and dinged up. But the newer foils, I don't see so much of a problem with personally. Like the Ultimate Spider-Man, the foiling technique on that card seems to
Yeah.
always be in good condition. But and also just kind of talking about the sleeves, not the perfect fix, but the regular size sleeves. I always found and Dragon Shield, if you ever want to be a sponsor to our podcast, please feel free to get in contact with me. But I will say that
Call me. Call me.
call me. Yeah, I'm making like the hand phone gesture on my right now. So, but Dragon Shields I always thought were perfect for versus system cards because they leave about a fine gap on the top of the card. So
Yeah.
that's what my experience has been. But whatever you do, please do not use those awful versus system sleeves from like the gift boxes.
Oh
No,
yeah,
those are.
those I forgot about those.
I mean,
Didn't you do like a video on like some like
yeah.
unboxing those or
Well,
showcasing them?
I think I did like a box opening on my channel somewhere, but I also did a review of these Marvel character sleeves from Ultra Pro too. And
Oh, is that what those were?
yeah, and I
Okay.
said, you can use the outer sleeve covers to protect the artwork of the standard size sleeves that you use. But anyway, so yeah, so I think that's about it. So let's jump into our topic today. So in this episode, we're gonna continue our top 8 Golden Age deck discussions. And Jacob, when you sent me the list and I was looking this over, I was like, "Oh man, this deck has got some spice." And this is called the Xbox deck. It's an X Men weenie version deck, and it's the whole idea of the deck is you have a bunch of little characters that you spam out, and this is kind of similar to the Brotherhood deck that we did a few episodes ago. Just to try to hit them as fast as you can and deal a bunch of damage, and have some other cool little you have some cool little tricks to do with it. So Jacob, do you want to just kind of talk briefly about the deck and what it does really quick?
Xbox is man, it's such a good deck. I really, really like this deck, and it's really overwhelming when you look at it. But one of the main reasons why I've just fallen in love with this deck is because it really rewards you for doing your research on your own meta and for playing the deck properly, right?
Hmm.
Usually we run into situations with decks where if I just stay on curve and just play what I have, then and attack properly, I can usually just kind of get there. And this is not that. So if you haven't done your research, if you don't know the combat tricks of the deck, you're probably going to get your face smashed in, and it's going to be maybe a little frustrating. The deck's not going to be as fun. This is a competitive, critical thinker. This is their dream. If you're that type of person, you're gonna love this deck. And there's not many times. The game got discontinued, right? So there's not many times where a player has successfully broken the format to have one of their own homebrews that they've worked on sneak in there and be an actual top 8 Golden Age competitor, like a deck in that way.
Right. And actually, you got this list from somebody on the Facebook group as well, right?
Timothy Sasquatch. But yes, he is the creator of the deck, and I believe we tried to scheduling conflicts and everything. We really wanted to have him on the show to talk about the deck, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, we just couldn't, make the time to get him on because he does work a normal job Monday through Friday. So we usually record on Friday mornings. So it was really hard to get him in, but maybe we'll have him back, when he has time on a future episode if he wants to elaborate some stuff that we didn't talk about.
Yeah,
But
maybe he can correct some of the things that we butcher during this. I hope that we can do this deck justice because it truly is. It's an amazing deck.
yeah, so hopefully, so yeah, when you sent me this deck list, I was like, wow, there's like a bunch of like characters that are only one copies of, and a bunch of other stuff. And the thing I want to add about this deck, it takes a little bit of all the good X Men cards from every set. And if you're somebody that doesn't really know some of the old cards very well for X Men in this game, this deck definitely kind of helps you get used to it. So like let's say for example there's new players that are just coming in playing the game now and they had no idea what any of the old cards, Cyclops Slim, the 2-drop in this deck, is definitely a classic card that I think people should know.
Mhm.
And there's a couple of other ones like the Beast and the Dazzler, and but I'm not gonna we'll get into more detail on the deck profile. But so I just wanted to mention that, so that's something that's pretty cool. And the Oh, also there's also cards from the actual X-Men set in this deck profile as well. So what we're gonna do something a little bit differently for this episode. Normally Jake does the deck profile and then he goes with the rotation. But I felt like you needed to take a break on the deck profile in this since you've been
Oh
doing them
man,
a lot.
get a day
So
off.
so I'm actually going to talk about the cards in the deck profile in this episode, and Jacob is just going to talk about the strategies, the rotation, that kind of stuff. Once I'm done talking about it, so unless if there's anything else you want to get into, I'm ready for the deck profile.
Now I'm excited to be your hype man for the deck profile. This is a new role for me, and I'm honored. It's gonna be awesome.
Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so starting with our one cost characters, we're going to start off with 4 copies of Blink Earth 295. She is a 1/2 with range and exiles X-Men character, has shift. When Blink enters play, rally for a character card. If you would rally a card with shift into your hand this way, instead you may remove it from the game shifted with 1 shift counter. Alright, next we have Shadowcat, Phase Shifter. She is a 4/3 X-Men character card. Shadowcat can't attack while you control 2 or fewer resources.
She is so good. Like a one cost 4/3 is so incredible.
With a very small downside.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, the downside's there, but man, she hits hard. Blink Blink almost seems like she's in like every competitive deck that I guess runs Exiles, which is kind of a dumb thing to say. Of course she is, but I see Blink a lot in many of the decks that are top 8 contenders for Golden Age.
And also talking about Blink, she's not going to be the last. This is not going to be the last time she's going to be mentioned on this podcast because when we get to the dreaded deck, you will be hearing her come back.
Oh man, yep. Everyone hates Exiles.
Next on the list is Forge. Cheyenne Mystic. He is a 1/2 X-Men character card. Activate, discard an X-Men character card from your hand. Search your deck for an equipment card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck, return Forge to its owner's hand. Next is Iceman Snowman. He is a 2/1 with range. He's a X Factor X-Men character card. Opposing characters that have used activated powers this turn can't ready. The next one cost character is Jubilee Mallrat. It is a 1/1 character with range, a X-Men character obviously. Whenever Jubilee attacks, target player loses 2 endurance. Next, we have probably one of the harder cards to find in the deck is a Longshot Earth Mojoverse, and he is a 2/1 with range, exiles X-Men card. He has shift. When Longshot enters play, name a card, then rally for a card with that name 3 times. Next, we have Dazzler Allison Blair, probably one of the oldest character cards in the game. She is a 1/1 with range. She is an X-Men character card, and her ability is activate, discard a X-Men character card from your hand, exhaust target support row character. Use this power only during the combat phase. Next, we have Wild Child, Age of Apocalypse. He's a 4/0 X-Men character card. At the start of the combat phase, exhaust Wild Child if you don't control another character with attack 4 or greater. Next, we have Lockheed Saurian Sidekick. He is a 2/1 with flight and range, an X-Men character card. Discard an energy card. Lockheed gets +2 attack this attack. And our final 1-cost character is Professor X, Mutant Benefactor. He is a 0/3 with range. He's an X-Men Shi'ar character card. For his ability is free. Look at the top card of any deck. You may put it on the bottom of that deck. Use only once per turn. So going on with the 2-cost characters, we run 2 copies of Beast Dr. Henry McCoy. He is 2/3, an X-Men character card. Plot twist costs you 1 less to play. Next, we have 2 copies of Sage Earth 616. 2 attack, 3 defense with range. It is an Exiles X-Men character card with shift. When Sage enters play, draw a card for each other character you control that entered play this turn. Next, we have 2 copies of Cyclops Slim. He is a 3/2 with range. He's an X-Men character card. While participating in a team attack, your X-Men characters get +2 attack and +2 defense. Moving on, we have Dazzler Rockstar. She is a 3/2 with range, an X-Men character card. Whenever a character you control team attacks, each opponent loses 1 endurance. And moving on, we have 1 copy of Archangel Warren Worthington III. He is a 2/3 with flight, an X-Men character card. Whenever Archangel attacks a support row character, Archangel gets +3 attack for this attack. And the next card is Gambit Swamp Rat. He's a 2/2 with range, an X-Men character card. Activate, discard an X-Men character card. Stun target character with cost 3 or less. Use only during your attack step. Next, from the Broken Marvel Evolution set, of course, is Feral Feline Fatale. One copy of her. She is a 4/1. She is a X-Force X-Men character card. Whenever you play a plot twist while Feral is in combat, she gets +1 attack this attack. And I know this is a card that my Victor, one of my friends in my play group, uses, like, because I think he has like a X-Force deck. He has that, that runs this Feral with like the Domino, I think it's a 3-drop Domino from Evolution, and does kind of like wacky things with characters in combat and stuff like that. So I am very familiar with this card because
Right.
that deck, that X-Force deck is pretty impressive, I have to say. So okay, the next 2-cost character on the list is Bishop, Age of Apocalypse. He is a 2/2 with range. He's an X-Men character card. When Bishop enters plays, you may search your deck for an Age of Apocalypse card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Very good search card for a 2 cost, in my opinion. Yeah, he has low stats, but hey, if you get a free card in your hand when it comes to play, you can't beat that. And so next on the list is Sabretooth, Age of Apocalypse. He is a 4/1 X-Men character card. Whenever an opposing character stuns another character you control, ready, Sabretooth. And finishing off with the 2-cost characters, we have Sunfire, Rising Star. He is a 0/0 of flight and range. 0/0 of flight and range, that's insane, right? Well, his effect is he gets +1 attack and +1 defense for each resource you control, and obviously a X-Men character card. And so a very interesting choice. He just pretty much gets bigger every turn. So I thought he was. I never seen him in. I mean, I've known the card for a while because I played, sealed and drafts and Marvel Evolution, but I didn't really see him in a deck until I saw this deck profile. So just wanted to make that quick note. Moving on to the 3-cost characters, we run 1 copy of Cable, Nathan Summers. He is a 5/4 with range, X-Men character card. When Cable enters play, target opponent loses 1 endurance for each X-Men character you control. And finishing our character cards, we have 1 copy of Sage, Xavier's secret weapon. It is a 5/4 X-Men character card. Has the mutant trait Mental. Plot twist costs your opponents 2 more to play, and locations cost your opponents 2 more to flip. There are 3 equipment cards in this deck. So the first equipment is Reality Gem, Infinity Gem. It's a 0-cost equipment. It has unique, so you could only have 1 of it out on the field. So whenever equipped character becomes stunned, you may return Reality Gem to its owner's hand. When Reality Gem comes into play, you may discard a card. If you do, replace target face-up resource. Next, we have Blackbird Blue, which is a 1-cost equipment. It is also unique. X-Men characters you control get +2 attack while attacking and have flight. And the last equipment in this deck is going to be the Blackbird. It also has unique. Characters you control have flight. X-Men characters you control get +2 attack and +2 defense. Whenever equipped character becomes stunned, KO the Blackbird. So moving on to the location cards, we play 1 copy of Danger Room, which is a 1-cost location card. Front row X-Men characters you control get +1 attack. Support row X-Men characters you control get +1 defense. Next for locations is Birthing Chamber. It is a 3-cost location. Activate, if you control 4 or more characters, draw a card. If you control 6 or more characters, instead draw 2 cards, then discard a card. And the first plot twist card in this deck is going to be our 4 copies of Warp Shards, which is probably one of the most hated plot twists in the whole game. And again, this is going to be a card you will not be hearing the last of. We will be getting into this card when we talk about the hated deck. But Warp Shards, it is, like I said, it's a 1-cost plot twist. Play if only you control Blink and only during your attack step. Remove target character from the game shifted with shift counters equal to its cost. Next, we move on to our 2-cost plot twist cards. And we run 4 copies of Time Breach. As an additional cost to play Time Breach, exhaust an X-Men character you control. Search your deck for up to 2 X-Men character cards with combined costs of 3 or less, reveal them, put them into your hand, and shuffle your deck, discard a card. Our final 2-cost plot twist is 3 copies of Ultimate Sacrifice. Play Ultimate Sacrifice only during the recovery phase. As an additional cost to play Ultimate Sacrifice, KO an X-Men character you control. Recover each stunned X-Men character you control. Moving on to the 3-cost plot twist, we play 3 copies of Fastball Special. And Fastball Special, I just want to make note that is probably one of the most memorable X-Men plot twists in the game. And what this does is play only during your attack step. To play, exhaust 2 X-Men characters in your front row. Stun target character. Moving on to the 4-cost plot twist cards, we run 3 copies of Power Nexus. As an additional cost to play Power Nexus, exhaust any number of X-Men characters you control. Stun target character if its cost is less than the number of X-Men characters you exhausted this way. And our last 4-cost plot twist is definitely not a stranger to anybody if you're playing Versus System, or maybe you've heard us mention this card in our previous episodes, but that is 3 copies of Pathetic Attempt. Negate target effect targeting you or a card in play you control. And as we mentioned before, it is a very useful card, and it just is used in several different decks. And finishing this deck profile, we're going to finish with our 5-cost plot twist, which is 4 copies of another well-known card in the podcast and in the Versus System community, but that is Omnipotence. Play only during the build phase. Choose a card name. Plot twist with the chosen name can't be played, and the payment powers of cards with that name can't be used. Definitely another staple card that people like to use in the Golden Age format, or maybe just in Versus System in general. But yeah, that is the deck profile. So Jacob, is there anything else you want to mention before you take the wheel?
I don't think so, man.
I think I just pretty said. I think I said
Yeah,
everything
that was it.
pretty that we need to talk about. So with that'll do it for the deck profile, and we're gonna talk about the rotation.
Looking at this deck, it probably seems like, well, this is just, it seems like all we really have to do is just play our stuff and attack. And you are absolutely right. That's literally all we have to do. So I'm gonna attempt to. There's really not much of a curve here. You just play your stuff. It's like any aggro deck, like whatever. All of the characters that are there, that's just what needs to come out on the board, right? However, what makes this deck from like just a basic aggro deck, kind of like do you remember like the X Faces or the Faces of Evil deck from like way back in the
Faces of Evil isn't
Avengers
Masters
days?
of Evil, is it?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
Masters of
okay.
Evil and like Thunderbolts. And then like Marvel X-Men came about, right? And then you had the Archangel, which fetched out the X Corp Amsterdam.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah. From
yeah.
X-Men, I know
Yeah.
that one
And
very
then
well.
that one cracks to put Faces of Evil actually in your resource row. And it was actually a pretty decent deck. But at the end of the day, like you just had like a couple cards that you know needed to make sure that you played. And then you just played the characters and just strategically attacked, right?
Right.
This is a lot like this deck. So I hope that I can do this deck justice because this deck truly is incredible. So I think to better understand and dissect what's happening, we need to group some of these cards together. Our shift stuff is Blink, Long Shot, Sage, Professor X. Professor X will set the stage for a lot of this stuff, and it's important that you don't just play your shift stuff just to play it. They need to be off the side because of Sage, right? Because Sage will draw a card for each character that interplay this turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be able to refill your hand multiple times. Now we combine this with warp shards off of Sage, and we can start consistently like refilling our hand and drawing more cards. Okay.
Okay.
So that's kind of one grouping that we need to understand. Here's the next grouping we need to understand: Forge, and then the 3 equipments. Okay. Forge doesn't seem like much, but he can fetch out the equipments. And the Blackbirds are great, but the reality gem is what's really going to do it for you. It's going to be situational whether or not you know you need the reality gem, because like we've stated in our other podcasts, like you have to know your meta and you have to know what you're playing against. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
you should know what you're playing against the moment they play their 1-drop or their 2-drop. It should be extremely obvious what deck you're fighting. So do your research and make sure that you know whether or not to fetch that reality gem or that blackbird early, or whether or not to activate Forge at all and just beat him for a couple turns and then activate it later, right? Very
Mhm.
toolbox reactionary here. So that's another grouping. Here's your next grouping. And this is where things start to get important. Beast, pathetic attempt, and omnipotence. Okay. Beast is so horrendously important for Golden Age because what it does is it makes omnipotence cost 1 less. And a turn 4 omnipotence is broken. Like we move from omnipotence being like, yeah, that's annoying, to what in the world? Like why is this 4 cost? Like how, like people don't understand how backbreaking it is to flip an omnipotence on turn 4. It's ridiculous, right? Especially when you're on evens, it's even worse. Along with that grouping is going to be Sage, your 3-drop, which is going to have your plot twist cost your opponent 2 more to play, and then the locations 2 more to flip. That's also important because as you pair these together, you're able to actually flip Omnipotence and call something that the opponent should have already been able to play. So let's say you're on odds, you flip Omnipotence, or you play Sage, right? Your opponent's plot twist now costs 5, right? And so now we move into the next turn, and you drop Beast and Omnipotence, and you flip Omnipotence, calling, let's say you call it an enemy of my enemy, which you probably won't be doing that, but just as an example,
Or maybe since you play locations in this deck, definitely Death of a Dream could be potentially something that you would
sure,
probably call
yeah,
for as well.
maybe, yeah. Really anything like that. The point is that all of a sudden you've locked your opponent out of being able to fetch something or play something important, and so that grouping is important for you to understand too. The Age of Apocalypse trio,
Right.
Bishop, Sabertooth, and
Well,
Wild Child.
yes.
That's another trio that's important because Bishop will fetch either one of these two out, right?
Right.
Uh, Time Breach is obviously not belonging in the grouping, but Time Breach is crazy important. Time Breach takes this deck from a scenario where I say this is just like any other aggro deck to my aggro deck is better than your aggro deck, because now I can fetch out these toolbox responses to many things, like Gambit.
Hmm.
Gambit can turn around and stun important concealed characters, right?
Right.
Another Iceman. We talked a little bit about Iceman before. Iceman is fantastic, and we'll talk a little bit later about him. But if you can think of all of the things that activate, or decks that revolve around activating to do something like stalling you out or to burn you out, Iceman literally lets you time warp in those instances. They won't be able to ready that next turn. That's huge. That's insane. And for it to be a 1-drop that you can fetch with Time Breach, to go and like, okay, I'm gonna go get Iceman, I'm gonna go get Gambit to deal with things, or I'm gonna go grab Sage and Blink so that I can set up my warp shards and start drawing additional cards.
Or if my
Really,
or if my opponent just happens to have no characters by turn 2 on the field, I could think about maybe getting Cyclops Slim so that we could team attack them directly for lots of damage.
definitely, definitely. And so this just goes kind of back with my point. Yeah, you just play your stuff and attack. You're right, but when you group all of these together and you realize exactly what you're doing, this deck goes from good to great and one of the best in my opinion. Jubilee and Dazzler. This is a really underrated combination here.
And are we talking about the 2-drop Dazzler?
I am, yeah, I'm
Okay.
talking about a two
Because
drop
I know there's
Dazzler.
2 Dazzlers in this deck, so I just
There
wanted to.
is. I'll get to the 1-drop in just a second, but the two
Okay.
drop Dazzler and Jubilee pair together really well. And here's why. When I go to team attack with Jubilee and Dazzler, their effects will trigger. And so Jubilee should burn you for 2, and I believe Dazzler burns for 1 each time you team attack, right?
Dazzler? The.
hmm the 2-drop, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, should burn you for 1. I have it
Right.
right here.
Right.
Yeah, whenever a character you control team attacks, target opponent loses 1 endurance. So I team attack. Well, now what's going to happen is I'm intentionally team attacking into something I know is not going to stun. Okay, let's say I team attack into your 4-drop Doctor Doom or something like that,
Or for
right?
drop blob.
Or yes, oh,
Or,
that's a really good example too. Or a
yeah.
4-drop blob. Now I fastball special. I exhaust. We're still in my attack stuff. I exhaust
Mhm.
2 other X-Men characters in my front row, and that can be hidden as well. Like I can have a front row hidden and a support row hidden.
Mhm.
So maybe I exhaust Blink and some other dude in another front row. Well, now all of a sudden I stun your blob or whatever, and you take the stun loss, but you took the endurance loss from the Jubilee and the Dazzler.
Mhm.
Now there's no legal targets. Like the attack isn't legal anymore because the defender is left. So now Jubilee and Dazzler ready, and they get to team attack again and burn you for 3 again.
And what's also really cool is if you going back to that Cyclops Slim, if you have him out on the field, let's say you team attack, so that's +2 to her, and then plus 2 to Jubilee and +2 to Dazzler. That's a decent amount of attacking power. So let's say you team attack. Let's see, let's do the math really quick. I think that's 7 damage if they both team attack. So
Yeah.
if you're attacking like a Doctor Doom that has a 6 defense, you team attack. Now you're in a really good position that you can either one stun them back, or if they play like a plot twist or something to try to get you, then you can fastball special in response, and
Hmm.
then just you made them waste a card, out of their resource row or out of their hand at that point, and your characters get the ready. So it's all about timing for the most part, but that's something you could potentially do when you team attack with these two.
Definitely, definitely. And I know that this is extreme and kind of silly, but like on the highest, most extreme level, we go. Remember warp shards, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can only play it during my attack step. I can remove the character from the game. Remove target character from the game. Shifted with shift counters equal to its cost.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to team attack Jubilee and Dazzler. I warp shard your character off the board. They
Mm-hmm.
ready. I
Right.
team attack again against a different character. This is 6 damage I'm burning you for, 6 endurance so far. Now I fastball special your other character,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now I ready my 2 guys again. I team attack again. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And so now we've got 9 endurance loss, and then the initial attack. If I've got Danger Room or something else going on, the Blackbird and Cyclops, and now I'm just going through with all my other characters. Like this is how hard this deck can sometimes hit. And obviously this isn't your main combo, but you can see after I've basically named all this stuff, where if you go, okay, turn 1 I'm going to play Blink, turn 2 I'm going to play Sage and draw a card or something like that. If Sage draws a card off of herself, I can't remember.
Right.
Or maybe I'll play Cyclops. Turn 3 I play Cable. You can see how playing some of these characters out of whack can just make this deck so dull and like not good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you're talking about the 2-drop stage, right? And she's every other, so not including herself.
Yeah. Okay. She's every other. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, you can really kind of screw things up really easily by just treating this like faces of evil. Where you're just kind of just vomiting on the board. You're actually strategically vomiting on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you'll actually suspend Blink, or suspend Sage turn 1 and 2. And, turn 3, you use like the beast setup with the omnipotence and things like that. And then you're going to start vomiting on the board with the birthing chambers and all that stuff. Well, now, if you wind up stunning all my guys, I have ultimate sacrifice. I can just kill off a Blink, or I can kill off, some irrelevant, guy at the time, recover everything, and just go at it again. So your kill condition turn, like I didn't like this guy at first, Cable. I really hated him. I thought he was trash. But when you play him and you have the warp shards, like you can wind up really burning your opponent out for a lot of damage. On turn 6, Cable can easily get in there for, you know, 10. I want to say about 10 damage,
Oh
10
wow.
endurance loss easily. Um, Cable's pretty incredible. I'm not gonna lie. I think Sunfire is really just there because he's a 2-drop and he's just fantastic. Like at late game, he becomes like pretty good.
Yeah, and like for turn 5, as you mentioned, he becomes like a 5/5
Mhm.
at that point.
Yep,
And when you're team attacking with your other little dudes, that it all adds up.
it does. It does all add up. Archangel is even like a kind of an underrated card. But I'll tell you what the most underrated card is, as far as characters in this deck. That's Sabretooth, Age of Apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
Sabretooth is bonkers because like he looks like he's a character that looks like he's just really bad until you play him
Hmm.
and you actually like really truly play test with him because um you can reinforce multiple characters. That's the really cool thing about Sabretooth is Sabretooth can actually reinforce like more than one character because like if Sabretooth is in that weird like middle of the pyramid formation and my opponent is like attacking the front row guy, Sabretooth can reinforce and then Sabretooth will ready because one of my guys got stunned, right? By an opposing character. And so now, you go to attack again, Sabretooth then, obviously reinforces again and readies, right? These things
Hmm.
happen. Fastball special is another amazing situation that happens. You can pull off different fastball specials or power nexus abilities off of Sabretooth because he readies.
Right.
Um, Time breaching off of Sabretooth when he readies. You can gain serious value. But if you didn't really know to be on the lookout for that, like to be on the lookout for that, you would just play Sabretooth and just attack and just be like, okay, yeah, he's just a 4-1 or whatever, right?
Hmm. But the fact
Um,
that you use like time bridge fastball special, you can exhaust him for that and use effects, then attack with your other guys. When they get stunned, you get to ready him to use time breach or fastball special again.
yes, sir. Mhm.
Okay.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
actually,
it's
one thing it just came to my mind now, and I know I should probably save this for the FAQ, but I'm just gonna ask it now.
yeah. What's up?
So with the Blackbird, the 2 cost, and Blackbird Blue, the 1 cost equipment in the deck, what are
Mhm.
the characters that you want to have those equipment on for the most part?
I mean, you're gonna want
Or maybe a
these.
better question is, which characters do you want to use ideally to equip those cards with?
Professor X is a good one to have
Okay.
one of those on to where like if he becomes stunned, it's really not that big of a deal. All your guys are gonna inevitably become stunned. So the two equipments, you have to make sure that you're in a scenario where you're not gonna get blasted out of the sky that round.
Hmm.
Nothing's worse than not being on the initiative, playing the Blackbird, and then getting attacked, and then you know you
So it's
end up.
definitely so. It also sounds like to me is like the best time to equip them is when you're going for like the turn that you're going to try to kill them, essentially.
Almost, yeah, almost like the kill turn, or really setting up to where your team attacks pose a threat, so that you can then use combat tricks like warp shards, fastball special, power nexus,
Right.
to get in there. What you don't want to do, put them on somebody that's going to make them a very clear target. You can't equip them to concealed characters, right?
Hmm.
That would be the perfect world. Is like
Well,
I would
not
say, yeah,
and unfortunately, I think like the Blackbird was printed in Marvel Origins, so that was before Concealed. They decided to come out with Concealed.
like if this was a perfect world and those rules didn't exist, I would just say, yeah, you just put them on blink. That's
Mm.
exactly what you need to do. I would say that putting them on maybe Professor X or Iceman or Gambit, people that you're going to use their abilities,
Okay.
and you don't necessarily need to attack to where they'll get stunned to where the Blackbird will actually KO,
Right.
right? That's about it, honestly. Like other than that, just use your best judgment in the time, and I don't think that detail matters as much, except for the Blackbird. The reality gem is actually kind of cool because you're going to want to put that on somebody that's going to get stunned to return the reality gem to your hand.
All right, sweet. So yeah, that is pretty much concludes this segment of the podcast. And we are now going to go into our frequently asked questions or FAQ segment of this episode. So now we have come to the FAQ segment of our episode. And this week we're going to keep the questions kind of short because we didn't really have a chance like in the previous deck profile episode, we asked members of the community, but we didn't have time for it in this episode. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of the questions that we've asked in previous episodes and apply them to this deck. So the first question is, what turn does this deck usually win by? And I am not familiar with the deck. I have not played it before, but after Jacob, you talked about it, I may kind of want to play this deck now. But I would assume that this deck probably wins around turn 3 or turn 4. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It can if the opponent just sits there and does nothing. But against the meta, the actual top 8 Golden Age meta, you're probably looking at maybe turn 5 or turn 6
Okay.
is going to be when you're going to wind up winning.
So the next questions: what are some of the good matchups and bad matchups? And again, I haven't played the deck, so I can't answer this question. So Jake, why don't you take it away?
Sure, thanks, man. The amazing part about this deck is that, and most of this information comes from the creator of the deck, right?
Mhm.
You can actually go on and see SuperAzn development of the deck over the years since Marvel X-Men came out. There's a thread online for it, and it is really cool. It's really eye opening. It's such an incredible deck. But the awesome part about this deck, and I found in my testing too, which I mean he's done all of the work, but I found in my testing as well that you're really 50-50 on a lot of the Golden Age matchups. I mean a lot of them. At the minimum, you've got some good matchups. There's no horrible matchups. The way that you're using Beast and Omnipotence and what you're calling with Omnipotence, whereas like if you call something wrong, you're just going to lose. But you're going to lose that in almost any Golden Age meta. Like if you reality gem the wrong thing, or Golden Age is super unforgiving in that aspect. Swarm decks, right? So we're looking at like the next New Brotherhood and decks like that, or even decks like Quick Voltage and things of that nature. This deck is actually just a better deck than those other decks. You can match character for character, right, for your opponent. You have better search options, and then on top of Ultimate Sacrifice for the board presence and Power Nexus to prevent huge stun backs, right, for damage, you're pretty much good to go on a lot of these Swarm decks. So talking about Swarm decks, you're at least looking at a 50-50 on those. But I mean, I think that this deck is one of the best Swarm decks in Golden Age. Spider Stall, I think that anytime that you run up against matchups where they're trying to stall you out, I mean, it's going to be rough. Obviously, Flame Trap and things like that. This is where you have to know what you're doing. You have to play Beast you have to play Beast with Omnipotence backup. You have to use Pathetic Attempts properly. You have to use Iceman, right? Iceman is really great for things like that because it's going to prevent Puppet Master and like all of these exhaust mechanics and things like that. It's going to prevent them from readying the next turn. And you know as well as I do from playing Spider Stall, if they break through once to stun your board, it's over for you. You've lost. You cannot let them provide a better board presence than what you can force them to exhaust. And we have issues with different variants of Spider Stall, right? I think that because you had a showcase for yours that used like the zombie, right?
Yes, exactly.
um, Using Omnipotence Beast with Omnipotence off of turn 4 and calling Spider-Man is going to be backbreaking against that matchup, and it's going to seal the deal for you. Dazzler is you can sometimes just get them to pretty much want to quit off of the one drop Dazzler because she can exhaust a support row character. So if you time her right, you can actually be able to break through with your characters. But again, if you're just playing, oh, I'm just going to play Blink on one, I'm going to play, all these other things like a basic aggro deck and not have any of these things in mind, Spider Stall is going to completely wreck your face hole in. So that's important to know. Against Mega City, one of the best ways to deal with Mega City is, I mean, once again, a Beast. You flip Omnipotence. Omnipotence calls Avalon Space Station, and this is going to shut down their engine for continuously recurring things back. After you've done that, there's a really amazing trick between Warp Shards and Fastball Special, where I can team attack you, and then you start going hard on the pumps, right? And so as you've pumped, I'm now going to Fastball Special and stun the card that you pumped up to a 12/12 to stop my team attack. And now that you've been stunned, those pump cards are wasted. My two characters ready because the attack is no longer legal, and I get to move on to the next person. So between Power Nexus and Fastball Special, I know it seems like Mega City may be almost like an impossible matchup because their defense is going to be significantly higher than anything that you could ever team attack for. but that trick is going to work like a charm every time. And on the turns that they're coming into you and like just ruining your board presence, ultimate sacrifice is going to be one of the best things that you can do in that scenario. Another good option for Mega City is finding Forge or using Time Breach for the 3 to drop Sage so that their locations cost a little bit more. Forge is going to fetch out the Reality Gem, which is going to help a little bit in that scenario as well. Obviously, blowing out the team up against Mega City is going to work like a charm because there isn't that many team ups in the deck. Obviously blow up what you need to blow up, but that's another really good option. Moving on to quick voltage, Iceman is totally going to shut down basically all burn variants where you have to exhaust to like flamethrowers and things like that. Iceman will really, really help against decks like that. Most of the other decks in the format, you're just simply going to be trying to omnipotence what you can omnipotence and make sure that pathetic attempt is set up and good to go. That's going to be most of your answers. You're probably going to hear me say it like 5 or 6 more times. Most of your answers are going to come from beast with omnipotence, and I know half of you are going to be like, well, it's not really going to work like that. I'm not always going to have that up and online. And I'm here to tell you, you almost will always have that up and online because of time breach and your mulligan conditions, birthing chamber, warp shards with sage, and then your draw power. I promise you, you will have beast omnipotence on turn 4. If not, you need to rethink how you play this deck.
The next question on the list is, what are some of the individual cards that hurt this deck? And obviously, we talked about them a little bit already, but the first card that came to my mind, obviously, when we were talking about this deck and after you sent me the deck profile, is Flame Trap. Flame Trap really hurts this deck. And obviously, the Firestar hot stuff also hurts this deck as well. Some of the other cards that I think also hurt it, definitely Total Anarchy, Absolute Dominance, Reign of Terror, which I don't know if we mentioned that or not. And, the number one card to hurt the stack, if it was legal, Overload.
Yeah, yeah,
But hey, if you have the Blackbird equipped, and let's say the 2-drop Dazzler is a 4/3 at this point, system failure can stop her from team attacking, so you don't lose that 1 endurance.
yeah,
Our favorite
yeah.
bad card is system failure.
Oh my gosh, I hate system failure. It's so dumb. It's such a dumb card. Yeah, man. Ultimate sacrifice is really the key with flame trap.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can if you get the beast omnipotence combination early. Sometimes you can get there if you're on evens. You can go ahead and race the flame trap, which is always really good because obviously you'll be able to flip omnipotence before they put down a what you call it,
Flame
a
trap.
yeah, to get to the 4 threshold to play the flame trap, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much going to be the answer all the time with omnipotence. Power Nexus is really good against Firestar. Shutting down the opponent's pathetic attempt with your own pathetic attempt would also be really good when you're trying to deal with Power Nexus or Fastball Special, and when you're trying to omnipotence something.
Okay, and I will also say this, that cards that could potentially hurt this deck. So I want to I'm making in the process of making a Golden Age deck. This might be a competitive deck that I make, and who knows, it may be in the top 8 slot somewhere in the future.
Hey, who knows, man?
But I am going to be playing a deck that is based around negating plot twists, and I have a couple ideas what I want to do with that. So obviously, people know probably the number one team affiliation that does that, but I'm not going to mention what team affiliation it is. But I've been having some of my own brews, and I'm gonna, maybe someday you and I will play a couple games with this deck, and we'll see how it does in the future.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
The next question on the list: what are some budget options for this deck? So, what I think a budget option could be, and it's not, one thing I want to say is a lot of the cards in this deck, it's not that a lot of them are expensive, it's that maybe some of them are quite hard to find. So, I can tell you right now, Warp Shards is probably one of the hardest cards to find because it was from Marvel Evolution, a low print run set, and everybody on the Facebook group just wants those cards for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So if I was gonna make, and also the long shot is kind of a hard card to get as well, but again, it's only one copy, so it's not like you're trying to find a play set of them. And I think Time Breach is also another hard card to find. So if I had to make a choice for a budget option, I would cut out the Warp Shards, the Time Breach, obviously the Blink because it goes with the Warp Shards, and I would cut out the Long Shot. Those are the only things that come to my mind personally.
Mm.
I think everything else is pretty easy to get. And I don't know, maybe you could replace those cards with, replace the warp shards with like some kind of pump, like flying kick or savage beatdown, like some kind of pump type card. But that's the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head. Is there any suggestions that you'd have?
Yeah, I think the card draw off of Sage and Blink with the warp shards are going to be what provides you that out for Beast and Omnipotence. And
Oh, right.
I think that to be a top contender for Golden Age, the deck has to almost be where it is. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot of budget options if you're like, hey, I don't care about this being the most optimal. I just like the idea of like a rush deck or an X kind of like an X-Men based weenie deck or something like that. I think that there are really good X Faces variants that are decent. We're talking the Faces of Evil from like
Mm-hmm.
Marvel Avengers and packing in a bunch of X-Men stuff, and it's not going to look anything like this, but it's probably going to fuel that need to have like a good like X-Men weenie deck. I guess some options. I'm totally against changing anything in this deck. I think the deck is almost perfect. The only thing that you really should change if your play group
In a
doesn't
perfect
allow it,
world.
right, is Omnipotence and Pathetic Attempt if the play group has like banned it, right? In which
uh
case you can like maybe add Bamf, you know? The
Ooh,
Yeah,
good
Bamf is good.
idea.
Yeah.
That's a really
Um
good idea, actually.
things like that. But I mean, just for like, hey, I want to make a really good weenie deck. I mean, and you don't really care about crushing like the top 8 of the format or anything like that. I think you're right. The shift stuff should go. It shouldn't go, but if it has to go, you can take that stuff out and you can totally add like Bamf and Bishop, the 2-drop Bishop.
The
There's a
one
lot of
where he gets like +2/+2 if he's in combat with somebody with range. Is it something like that?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. I thought it was +3/+3, but I could totally be wrong.
We'll put the
Uh,
card up on the
yeah.
YouTube channel
Okay.
of this video, or the video on the YouTube channel.
Right. I don't know, tech upgrade, go fetch for more equipment. There's a bunch of really cool stuff that you could do but the actual Faces of Evil list is very inexpensive.
Hmm.
And Marvel Avengers was not a limited run. You can find, I mean, those cards are everywhere. Category
Yes.
1, I believe, has a ton in stock for all that stuff.
So the final question on our FAQ segment, and of course, anybody who's listened to our podcast in the past definitely knows this one. And personally, it's one of my favorite questions. If you can allow 4 copies of any one band card in this deck, what would it be? And I'm going to go first. Anybody who's listened to this podcast knows that my answer will always be Overload, no matter what. It has been for every single episode, and it'll actually continue to be Overload until there's one episode where I will actually change my decision. And I've been planning for it, so hope you all stick around to find out what the other card that I choose is.
Mine would have to be Dr. Light. I would want Dr. Light
Yeah,
instead of oh man. I
makes sense.
think
Makes
yeah,
sense.
I don't want to take out Cable because he's so good with warp shards, but
Hmm.
definitely
Maybe
well, I
Sunfire.
yeah, that or maybe I would take out one warp shards for well, if you had a Gundam I had forcing me to have 4 Dr. Lights, then I would obviously have 4 Dr. Lights in here because of the Sage interaction.
Right.
Constantly bringing back Sage, drawing the cards, and then KOing Sage to ultimate sacrifice to turn around and do it again next turn sounds really bonkers.
Yeah, he'd be nuts. I know you picked him for in a previous episode too. So yeah, I could see Dr. Light being your pick here. Okay, so that is going to conclude it for this episode of the podcast. And the one thing that I want to mention too, and I don't know if this is important to mention about the deck itself, but your highest cost character is going to be 3 cost characters, and I think that's the lowest cost that we mentioned in the deck, because it seems like a lot of the decks are either 4 or higher characters, but
Right.
the character curve stops at 3 with this deck, and I think that's the lowest that we've ever seen for a deck that we've done so far on the podcast.
Yeah, so far. Yeah, definitely. So SuperAzn, shout out to this guy, man. This deck is an absolute masterpiece. And I would absolutely, I'm sure you would too. I would love to have him on the show to talk more about this deck because I mean he's the creator of the deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do it justice. I don't know how you feel about it, but I can't even begin to do this deck justice. However, I have written some notes from his thread that he has specifically talked about, and I want to make sure that I give credit where credit's due. And
Yeah, and
before we
also make
close
sure if
out,
you could send me the link for that, I'll post it in the YouTube channel
okay.
in the description as well.
So here's some really basic notes before I leave because I really want to make sure that he gets credit for this. I didn't build this. I mean, it was this was all Super Ann's. He's such a fantastic job. So here's his notes from his thingamabop.
Article?
Yeah, article thing. It's on the Tappa Talk website.
Okay.
So here's some important interactions. Okay, uh, time breach for Beast with Omnipotence backup. Dazzler, the one drop Dazzler on off turn initiatives. This trick can, like, after your opponent has played and formed up, dropping the Dazzler and exhausting their back row character off the one drop Dazzler can almost, and this was his words, is so funny that sometimes it causes them to scoop. The three drop Sage can delay cards until you can omnipotence and move past their relevance. And this is all, everything that I'm saying is all word for word off of the website. So um, I just wanted to make sure that this was said. Cable, the 3 drop cable, can have game ending burn damage, especially when you mix that with warp shards and things of that nature. So don't skimp on that. I know for me personally, I used to hate cable and I actually took him out. And after I've read up on all this stuff, I realized that was a huge, huge mistake.
Right.
Forge obviously finds Blackbird Blue and Reality Gem. The Reality Gem is good because you can't omnipotence it offline and it's searchable. So Reality Gem is really your ace in the hole to get away from the Golden Age stuff. Iceman is in there to ruin all stall and all active burn damage. Dazzler and Jubilee can provide some burn damage with fastball special. Sabretooth, and this is his exact words, he says Sabretooth is another character that's bad until you see it in action. Reinforcing multiple characters, getting a free time breach activation, and a free body for multiple fastball specials when you play it correctly. You want to play Sage before Power Nexus to shut down Pathetic Attempt. Really, anybody that you want to kill, make sure that Sage is out there to float out the Pathetic Attempt threshold cost. And I believe that that's it. I'll send you the link so that people can read the thread from beginning to end. But man, SuperAzn, good job, dude. And please get in contact with us. We'd love to have you on the show. Masterful deck. It's not often that somebody actually makes a deck that gets to the top 8. And good job, dude. Masterfully done.
Yes. There. I'm giving the applause
Yeah,
right now.
there it is. You should, dude. You should build this and play. I think you'd really like it.
I have most. Actually, I think I have all the cards for the deck, which would require me to take out cards from other decks. But yeah, I might give it a whirl at my locals this weekend. So
This is what you do. You take Dusk from like all your Dusk copies from Web of Spider-Man. You just take a permanent marker to the back of that thing, man. Warp shards. That's what I do, man.
no
Warp
love for
shards.
Dusk. Wow.
No love. Yeah,
No,
he's garbage.
actually, I actually have about 60 copies of System Failure that I could just use that instead. So I'll
That
just do
because
that.
that is a trash card. Yep, that is. I'm gonna make a video and send it to you of me having over 100 system failures and just burning them. That's what I'm gonna
Or
do.
flushing them down the toilet or something
Yeah,
like
they're
that.
trash. Like,
You know,
sorry, don't put system failure in your deck. Don't do it.
we're gonna have an episode where we talk about why that card is bad. I feel like in the future, definitely for the next season. But okay, so that'll conclude it for this episode. Now, I just want to maybe I should tell the viewers right now like what the plan for the rest of the season is, and because yes, because the mob has plans. Gordon's got plans. The Golden Guardians have plans. So yeah, so the next episode we're gonna do Black Bamboo, and we are doing the order of this based on a vote that I did in the Facebook group. So just to kind of go over the votes again. So I think the order is we just talked about Xbox in this episode. Next is gonna be Black Bamboo. And then after that, I think we had a tie between Convex and Quick Voltage. So I think we decided to do Convex for the last deck profile episode of this podcast. So, and then what we're going to do for the final episode of the season, we're going to do a episode where we're just going to kind of talk about some of the things that we talked about the season, some of our favorite episodes. And I might do a thing where I talk to the community to see, oh, what are some things you guys want to mention that you liked about the podcast season 1, or what are some things you didn't like about it that we can improve on. So definitely look for, some kind of post in the group sometime in the near future for that. But besides that, is there anything else you want to say before we sign off here?
And to hype up the people for next week, Black Bamboo. People are probably like, "What in the world is that?" That is a Black Bolt from like I think it's MEV. It's the scroll guy that's the Inhuman scroll. He gets like +1/+1 for each affiliation he has.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's like a one drop, right? So we're gonna look into a deck that has the one drop Black Bolt and then Hypnotic Charms with Underworld, and we're just gonna pack the deck with like as many different affiliations as we possibly can to make it work. And we're gonna get Black Bolt up to a stupid amount and try and poop out multiple Black Bolts. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be good stuff.
Yeah, so you guys definitely don't want to miss our next episode. And yep, that's about it for this episode. I am Brandon Hitt, also known as Super Fanboy Guy, with my co-host Jacob Wheeler. We thank you for tuning into this episode. And I have actually a quote that I want to end this episode with. And I usually say see you next time or something like that, but I have something different for this episode. Okay?
Okay.
Be excellent to each other.
Whoa. Whoa.
So,
I don't mean to step on. Can I have a quote too?
sure, if you got one, go for it.
All right.
It has to be better. It has to be better than mine, though.
It might be. Buckley's my spirit animal from King of the Hill.
Okay.
All right. So are you ready?
All right. Here we go.
So guess what?
What?
Chicken butt. Dude, he says it like 100 times on King of the Hill. Come on now. You're not a real King of the Hill fan, are you?
No, I am.
You're
I like it. It's just been such a long time since I've seen it, and I don't like watch it on a regular basis. But I am a fan of Mike Judge, and tell me you've seen some of his other works like Office Space and Idiocracy.
I've seen Beavis and Butthead.
Okay. I forgot you're younger than me, so you wouldn't know a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I know, right? The guy that's like the next door neighbor or something that Beavis and Butthead like always terrorize.
Yeah.
It's like the same voice as Hank Hill.
Mr. Anderson? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's been such a long time, but okay. So anyway, that'll conclude it for this episode. And be excellent to each other. And guess what, chicken butt.
Later, guys.